In this chilling video, we delve into the tragic and horrifying story of Junko Furuta, a young Japanese girl whose life was brutally cut short in 1989. Brace yourself for a harrowing exploration of the unspeakable torture and torment she endured at the hands of her captors for 44 agonizing days. This heart-wrenching tale sheds light on the darkest corners of human cruelty and raises questions about justice in the face of such heinous acts. Join us as we unravel the haunting details of Junko Furuta's ordeal, seeking to understand and remember the indomitable spirit that endured unimaginable suffering. Furuta was born in Misato, Saitama Prefecture. She lived with her parents, her older brother, and her younger brother. As a teenager, she attended Yoshio Minami High School and worked part-time at a plastic molding factory during after-school hours since October 1988. She did this to save up money for a graduation trip she had planned. Furuta also accepted a job at an electronics retailer, where she planned on working after graduation. At high school, Furuta was well liked by her classmates, with high grades and very infrequent absences. She was a popular girl who was considered to be pretty and had dreams of becoming an idol singer. The night she was abducted, Furuta had been looking forward to going home to watch the final episode of the television show Astanbo. The perpetrators were 4 teenage boys, who were referred to as A, B, C, and D in court documents. At the time of the crime, they used the second floor of Minato's house as a hangout, and had previously engaged in crimes, including purse snatching, extortion, and rape. Miyano, the leader of the crime, had a history of problematic behavior since elementary school, such as shoplifting and damaging school property. In April 1986, he enrolled in a private high school in Tokyo, though he dropped out the following year. After this, he continued to commit several crimes that escalated over time. At the time of the crime, he had been living with his girlfriend, the older sister of boy D, Yasushi Watanabe, and was working as a tile worker to save up money to marry her. Dissatisfied with the job's low pay, Miyano became involved with a gangster and frequently committed crimes. This delinquent behavior consequently made his girlfriend lose interest in him and ended their relationship. On the 25th of November 1988, Miyano and Minato wandered around Misato with the intention of robbing and raping local women. At 8:30 p.m., they spotted Furuta riding her bike home after she had finished a shift at her job. Under Miyano's orders, Minato kicked Furuta off her bike and fled the scene. Miyano, under the pretense of witnessing the attack by coincidence, approached Furuta and offered to walk her home safely. Upon gaining her trust, raped her in the warehouse, and again in a nearby hotel, threatening to kill her. From the hotel, Miyano called Minato and his other friends, Joe Agra and Yasushi Watanabe, and bragged to them about the rape. Agra reportedly asked Miyano to keep her in captivity in order to allow numerous people to sexually assault. The group had a history of rape and had recently kidnapped another girl, whom they released afterward. Around 3:00 a.m., Miyano took Furuta to a nearby park, where Minato, Agra, and Watanabe were waiting. They had learned her home address from a notebook in her backpack, and told her they knew where she lived, and that Yakuza members would kill her family if she attempted to escape. The 4 boys overpowered her, took her to a house in the Isa district of Adachi, and gagged her. The house, which was owned by Minato's parents, soon became their regular gang hangout. On the 27th of November, Furuta's parents contacted the police about her disappearance. To discourage further investigation, the kidnappers forced her to call her mother 3 times to convince her that she had run away but was safe and staying with some friends. They also forced Furuta to stop the police investigation. When Minato's parents were present, Furuta was forced to act as his girlfriend. They dropped this pretense when it became clear that Minato's parents would not report him to the police. Minato's parents later claimed they did not intervene because they were afraid as their own son was increasingly violent toward them. On the night of the 28th of November, Miyano invited 2 other boys, Tetsuo Nakamura and Koichi Ahara, E and F, respectively, to the Minato house. They went to the upstairs room, where Junko was sitting, wearing a long-sleeved t-shirt and a skirt that Miyano had stolen from a clothing store a few days prior. They drank cough medicine, pretending it was drugs, and acted high. Furuta tried to run away, screaming in fear. Miyano grabbed her legs and Ahara put a pillow over her face. The parents were awakened and went to check on the screen, to which Minato told them that it was nothing. The group then proceeded to gang rape During this time, she was in a state of unconsciousness, staring at the ceiling without blinking. The group held Furuta captive in the Minato residence for 40 days, where they repeatedly beat and tortured her. They also invited other men and teenage boys home and encouraged them to take turns. According to the group's statements, the four shaved forced her to naked and in front of them, and left her on the balcony in the middle of the night with little clothing. They inserted objects including a lit match, a metal rod, and a bottle, and force-fed her with large amounts of alcohol, milk and water. She was also forced to smoke multiple cigarettes at once and inhale paint thinner. In one incident, Miyano repeatedly burned Furuta's legs and arms with lighter fluid. By the end of December, Furuta was severely malnourished after being fed only small amounts of food and eventually only milk. Due to her severe injuries and infected burns, she became unable to go to the downstairs toilet, and became confined to the floor of Minato's room in a state of extreme weakness. Furuta's appearance was drastically altered from the brutality of the attacks. Her face was so swollen that it was difficult to make out her features. Her body was also severely crippled, giving off a rotting smell that caused the four boys to lose sexual interest in her. As a result, the boys kidnapped and gagged a 19-year-old woman who, like Furuta, was on her way home from work. Murder and investigation. On the 4th of January 1989, after losing a game of mahjong against another person the night before, Miyano decided to take his anger out on Furuta by pouring lighter fluid on her body and setting her on fire. Furuta allegedly made attempts to put out the fire, but gradually became unresponsive. They continued to punch her, ignited a candle and dripped hot wax on her face, placed 2 short candles on her eyelids, and forced her to drink her own urine. After she was kicked, she fell onto a stereo unit and collapsed into a fit of convulsions. Since she was bleeding profusely, and pus was emerging from her infected burns, the 4 boys covered their hands in plastic bags. They continued to beat her, and dropped an iron exercise ball onto her stomach several times. The attack reportedly lasted 2 hours. Furuta eventually succumbed to her wounds and died. Less than 24 hours after her death, Minato's brother called to tell him that Furuta appeared to be dead. Afraid of being penalized for murder, the group wrapped her body in blankets and shoved her into a travel bag. They then put her body in a 5.5 US gallon drum and filled it with wet concrete. Around 8 p.m., they loaded it and eventually disposed of the drum in a cement truck in Koto, Tokyo. During her captivity, Furuta had mentioned to her captors several times that she regretted not being able to watch the finale episode of *Tanbo*. Miyano found the videotape of the episode and placed it in the travel bag. As he later explained, it was not because he pitied Furuta, but because he did not want her to return as a ghost and haunt him. On the 23rd of January 1989, Miyano and Orgura were arrested for the gang rape of the 19-year-old girl whom they had kidnapped in December. On the 29th of March, 2 police officers came to interrogate them, as women's underwear had been found at their addresses. During the interrogation, Miyano believed that one of the officers was aware of his culpability in Furuta's murder. Thinking that Joe Orgura had confessed to the crimes against Furuta, Miyano told the police where to find Furuta's body. The police were initially puzzled by the confession, as they had been referring to the murder of a different woman and her 7-year-old son that had occurred 9 days prior to Furuta's abduction, a case which remains unsolved. The police found the drum containing Furuta's body the following day. She was identified via fingerprints. On the 1st of April 1989, Orgura was arrested for a separate sexual assault, and subsequently re-arrested for Furuta's murder. The arrest of Watanabe, Minato, and Minato's brother followed. Several other accomplices who participated in abusing and raping Furuta were officially identified, including Tetsuo Nakamura and Koichi Ahara, who were charged with rape after their DNA was found on and inside the victim's body. Prosecution. The identities of the defendants were sealed by the court as they were all juveniles at the time of the crime. Journalists from the *Shukan Bunshun* magazine uncovered their identities and published them, on the grounds that, given the severity of the crime, the accused did not deserve to have their right to anonymity upheld. All 4 defendants pled guilty to committing bodily injury that resulted in death, rather than murder. In July 1990, a lower court sentenced Hiroshi Miyano, the leader of the crime, to 17 years in prison. He appealed his sentence, but Tokyo High Court Judge Ryuji Yanase sentenced him to an additional 3 years in prison. The 20-year sentence is the second longest sentence given in Japan before life imprisonment. He was 18 years old at the time of Furuta's murder. After his release, Minato moved in with his mother. However, in 2018, Minato was arrested again for attempted murder after beating a 32-year-old man with a metal rod and slashing his throat with a knife. Yasushi Watanabe, who was originally sentenced to 3 to 4 years in prison, received an upgraded sentence of 5 to 7 years. He was 17 at the time of the murder. For his role in the crime, Joe Augura served 8 years in a juvenile prison, before he was released in August 1999. After his release, he took the family name Kamisaku when he was adopted by a supporter. He is said to have boasted about his role in the kidnapping, rape and torture of Furuta. In July 2004, Augura was arrested for assaulting Takatoshi Isono, an acquaintance he thought his girlfriend may have been involved with. Augura tracked Isono down, beat him, and shoved him into his truck. Augura drove Isono from Adachi to his mother's bar in Misato, where he allegedly beat Isono for 4 hours. During that time, Augura repeatedly threatened to kill the man, telling him that he had killed before and knew how to get away with it. He was sentenced to 7 years in prison for assaulting Isono and has since been released. Augura's mother allegedly vandalized Furuta's grave, stating the dead girl had ruined her son's life. Nobuharu Minato, now Shinji Minato, who originally received a 4 to 6 year sentence, was re-sentenced to 5 to 9 years by Judge Ryuji Yanase upon appeal. He was 16 at the time of the murder. Minato's parents and brother were not charged. Furuta's parents were dismayed by the sentences received by their daughter's killers and won a civil suit against the parents of Minato, in whose home the crimes were committed. Miyano's mother reportedly paid Junko Furuta's parents $370,000 in compensation, as ordered by the civil court, after selling their family home. Junko Furuta's funeral was held on the 2nd of April 1989. This one took a very hard time to create, as the story turns much darker with time. I hope you like it. Make sure to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching. This is CrimeCrypt, till then signing out.